Hey guys, that'll be for our How to Do Stuff in Japan playlist. So, last week the temperatures were over 30 in central Japan, pretty warm. Today it's raining and the temperature's 16. So over the next week it's going to start to get cool. So some of you will remember we've talked about this before. The change between the warm temperatures and the cold temperatures is usually fairly quick. You might get a few days of perfect temperatures, cold, and then in spring it goes from cold to hot fairly quickly. So this is our routine. We come in here and we swap. So in spring we put the heaters there and take the fans into the house, and in autumn we bring the fans back out of the house. So we were using those fans last week. We take the stoves away, we put the fans where the stoves live. So that's how quick it happens every year. So those cages are actually to go around the stoves. We don't use them anymore. We used to use them to keep little kids away from the stoves because the stoves are super hot. Those of you who haven't used kerosene stoves before, they give off some fairly intense heat. So little fingers too close to those stoves could get really severely burnt. So those little cages are great if you happen to have kids or you happen to have a fifi and you want to keep them away from getting burnt. The cages are great. The cages can take the heat. They're specially made for the job. And you buy them where you buy the stoves, basically, usually in home centres and places like that. So rainy day, pull the stoves out. The stoves have been covered, but they always seem to attract dust. They're also cleaned. We clean them before we put them away, but we also clean them before we put them in the house too, for a couple of reasons, as we'll show you a little later. So we're sort of lucky at the old house that we've got this outside space. If you find yourself living in Japan and dealing with these stoves and you don't have the outside space, it doesn't really matter. There's people that we know that just crack these things out of the cupboard, plug them in, put the kerosene in and fire them up. So you can do that. The reason we clean them is a couple of reasons. One is if they're dusty, when they burn, they smell because the dust burns. Just for safety too, keep them nice and clean, they'll function better. But it also prolongs their life because these things have all sorts of sensors in them for safety, which is a good thing. So they have tilt sensors, so if you bump it, if you walk past one of these stoves and bump it just even slightly, they'll shut down. So it's designed so in the case of an earthquake, if the ground starts to shake, the stoves will shut down for safety. So they also have all sorts of heat sensors and things as well. So they've got lots of safety features, which is good, keeps them relatively safe. The new ones are relatively safe, but they will work better if you keep them clean. So at the back here, you've got this rear filter too. You can see there behind the fan. So if you keep that clean, it'll help it running more efficiently as well. So it's just a good idea if you can. So if you don't have an outside space like this, we're sort of lucky we've got this outside space, and you've got one of these things, you can just pull it out of the closet and just basically do what the old guy's doing. Just give it a good dusting and a good wipe over, and then down inside where the kerosene can goes, there's a filter. So if you can take that out and give it a bit of a rinse. That one's actually alright. It was actually cleaned before we put it away, but it's just our little habit that we've got to clean it before we fire the thing up. So just give it a wipe with a rag. If you can blow it with air, it's a good thing. We use compressed air to clean those things. But just clean it out, give it a bit of a rinse with other kerosene, and then throw it all away if you can. It's a bit hard when living in an apartment or somewhere like that, but if you can, it will prolong the thing's life. Because that's the other thing, if that filter starts to get dirty, the stove will start to shut down on you, and it'll tell you the filter's dirty. So they're pretty good, but you've got to treat them with a lot of respect. These things are a cause of fires because the front of them does put out some incredible heat. So if you have something that's too close to one of these things, it will catch fire. So you have to treat it, it's like an open flame basically. An open flame being blown by a fan, so it's pretty intense. So if you do have an outside space, a can of compressed air from the electronics shop or from the home centre to give the filter a good blast, and then also for blasting the inside of the stove too to get the dust out if you can. If you can't, not much you can do about the kerosene filter, but the actual machine itself, you can hit it with the vacuum cleaner, try and suck some of the dust out of it. We stripped one of these things down once on a video a long time ago, had a look what was inside it, but don't really want to do that. We treat these things differently. Most other things in the house, we're happy to fix them and try and keep them alive when they're a bit dodgy, you know, air conditioners and the like. However, with these things, we just don't want to take any risks. So we've had things like some of these in the past that have started to show warning signs and tell us that they had faults and things, and they kept shutting down, and we just stopped using them because they're just too dangerous. If they've got a fault, you just don't use them. So again, that back filter, that's plastic. So if you don't have air that you can blow it with, you can always wash it under water and then dry it with a hairdryer. That works. Just get the dust out of it. Again, stick a vacuum cleaner on the back of this thing too and suck the dust out of there if you can. Because that fan sucks air in from the back and blows it out the front, which means when it sucks in dust as well. So it can get some of the dust gets past the dust filter and gets inside. So if you can blow it straight out the front, that's a good thing. Because as you'll see later, if you leave dust in there, when you fire the thing up, it can stop it from firing up. Or what happens is the dust burns and sets off a big cloud of smoke, which it doesn't seem to be a big problem. Most people seem just to accept it, but it does stink. So if you can get the dust out of there before you fire it up, it's better. Gently blowing. That's a fairly serious compressor, that one, so we're just using a little bit of pressure there. Don't want to use too much and do any damage inside, all those sensors and electronics and stuff. Just sort of blowing it out. It's a bit of an experiment, this video. Usually with stuff like this we speed it up. In this case all we've done is we've cut some stuff out, make it a little bit shorter, just so we could leave the volume. One of the patrons suggested recently that we do this on videos like this. Instead of speeding them up to 12 times speed like we normally do, just give normal speed and a bit of the normal background noise. So it's a bit of an experiment. Let us know what you think about this. So that one's basically done. So we're going to repeat the process. We've got two. We've got a little one and a big one. Mentioned the air conditioner previously. Our air conditioners in the house are reverse cycle, so we've been using them to cool the house up till last week. From next week we'll probably be using them to warm the house, and they do work. And in a small apartment they're usually enough, but in the middle of winter in the big old farmhouse it's just not enough, and we need the kerosene stoves. It's the only way to really get the place warm. So that's our little refueling centre there in the corner. And that's a little battery operated pump. They're worth about $10, those things. You buy them at the home centre. They've got the pump. In that black handle there is the pump and two big batteries. And you can get little pressure, little hand pump versions where you pump it a few times and then it feeds just using gravity and sort of siphon system. So they work too. But for $10, this little battery operated pump is the go. Because it's simple. So just getting the dust off it, again trying to keep everything clean. The two tanks on the right there are empty. We try and time it so I've used up most of our kerosene by the end of winter, so it's not sitting there for all of summer. But we've still got a little bit left in this other container over here, so we'll put the pump in there and feed it into the tank. The other advantage of this little battery pump is you just turn it on and then you sit back, and it's got a little wire in it, this little sensor. When the tank you're filling is full, it turns off, the pump turns off, so it won't overflow. So that's worth $10, isn't it, right there? So we burn through a bit of this. Middle of winter when it's really cold, when it starts to get under zero, we burn through a fair bit of kerosene. We could use, in a month, we could use $200 worth of kerosene in a month. But it does make a big difference, you know, the old house, keeping the old house warm, just because it's a big floor area. But if you find yourself living in Japan in a little apartment, you'll probably find your reverse cycle air conditioners enough. So I've got to repeat the process with that one. So that's the bigger one. We use that one in the kitchen because it warms the kitchen and the genkan and the hall. So that's the big one. And then the little one, we use that in the tatami room because that's where the old man's got his office. And it doesn't have to be so warm in there. So that big one there warms the kitchen and around where the bathroom is. And so what we're going to do, we're going to fire it up and you watch. So keep in mind, we've already cleaned the inside. So it takes a while when you turn it on. It tells you, so you can see there it's set for 20 degrees and the current air temperature is 16. So it sort of sits there and processes it for a minute. And then you'll hear it go click, 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 and it fires up. And even though we've cleaned it, you'll see a little cloud of smoke come out. So if you get one of these and you don't clean it and you fire it up, you'll get a big cloud of smoke come out. So don't be too concerned, it's fairly normal. We see people do it all the time. We've been in family members' houses where they fired these things up. When they first fire it up, big cloud of smoke comes out because it's dusty in there. So it's pretty normal. So those of you who haven't seen a kerosene stove close up, that's what it looks like. It really is an open flame in there and it blows. It's really hot out the front. So it will start a fire. If you leave a towel hanging near it or a curtain or something like that, it will start a fire. So they cause a lot of fires every year, so you've got to treat them with a lot of respect. So, cool rainy day, that was a good project to get done. So I'll move them in the house. We won't use them this week, but probably from next week it'll start getting cool. So I might fire them up in the morning. Get up in the morning and it's cold and wet. Anyway, there was that. More videos coming soon.